I saw Keaton Verhoeff and Gavin McKenna. Who would go number one? And I just wanted your thoughts on this. What percentage Verhoeff could go number one at this point?
I think it's low, and I think the reason that we had the discussion is that, basically, Frank Saravalli, who I worked with at Daily Faceoff, had a tweet about, don't be surprised, if Verhoff, supplants Gavin McKenna. It was, making bold statements and things like that. And while that tweet got ratioed to the moon, what I talked to Cam about was like, hey, like let's actually like break it down. Let's have a serious conversation. It's not trying to drum up drama for the sake of drama. I think there's just a real lack of knowledge about how good Keaton Verhoff really is. And the other thing that's a factor is that Gavin McKenna is a slight build winger who is an incredible offensive talent, but his game away from the puck is okay. Like it's not great. And so with that, and like you think about guys like Macklin Celebrini, who went, number one 2 years ago, and you think of just the overall game that he has. You think about the wing that went number one most recently in Uri Slafkovsky, and you say, okay, well, he's got size, strength, this tremendous goal scoring ability. There's a number of factors that led him to be number one. Whether he should have been number one or not remains to be seen. But I think that the real reason that we wanted to have that conversation was not to just drum up controversy. It's more to say, hey, like let's not forget that this player is really good. Now, we recorded that in the midst of the Hlinka Gretzky Cup. Now, when you're the captain of a team that doesn't finish in the top spot, and you're the number one defenseman, and you're supposed to be the all-world guy, it's not a great start to your season if you're Keaton Verhoff. I still think he's going to be in the mix for the World Junior team, and other things like that. And I just think it's important to know that we're not starting from a position of number one being completely out of reach. I think when Celebrini went number one, we didn't think for a second at any point that year that anyone was going to catch him. And as of right now, it's all about Gavin McKenna at number one. And it should be. Based on all the evidence that we have, it should be. But I'm just saying, like, what we wanted to say is, hey, let's not put the cart before the horse on this discussion when we have a guy that could be a number one defenseman. And then we also had the debate later, who would you rather take, Matthew Schaefer or Keaton Verhoff? And if you go off of their 16U seasons, or their U17 seasons rather, Verhoff's was impressive. Maybe more impressive. He had 21 goals. He's a little more. He was more offensively put together at a younger age and is bigger. And I think the skating is very good. So there's a lot of these factors. So it's like, would Keaton Verhoff in a 1-to-1 against Matthew Schaefer? Now Schaefer didn't play a full season, so he's not getting that full advantage this year. You'd say, well, there's at least a discussion to be had there between those two players as well.
Yeah, under Frank Saravalli's tweet, I actually posted like the D-1 seasons of Verhoff and Matthew Schaefer. And Matthew Schaefer, the knock on him was his offensive ability that year. And then the next season with Erie, he absolutely went off. But also, Verhoff is a right-handed defenseman, which usually go a little
Yeah.
higher in drafts. 6'4", plays like a fourth forward out there. So I do believe that there is some level of intrigue at number one based on what team goes. Like if the Sharks, they could create the greatest top six of prospects on paper of all time if they take Gavin McKenna, but Verhoff is also right there. So I thought that was interesting. I wanted to ask about Ivar Stenberg as well, who's going to come onto the channel next week. But I wanted to ask like him versus Anton Frendel right now, during their draft years. Do you think that like Ivar Stenberg is more polished than Anton was at the same time?
I think more polished. I mean, I think he's coming in with, yes, I would say he is more polished, but again, it's a center versus wing debate. Stenberg plays more on the wing. He's smaller as well. So there's two different things there. What I would say though is that Stenberg had half a point a game in the SHL playoffs last year. You know, Frölunda was better when he was with them than they were without him. And so that is something that, you know, Anton Frendel didn't have that evidence to his name that season. Stenberg's going to come into this year as a late birth date too. So the age wise, he's not that far ahead, or behind rather. So that's another factor in it. But I think that his offensive toolkit is more advanced at this point. His competitive drive is at the same level. His skating is probably a bit better. So you have all these different things, but he is smaller. He is a wing. Could he play center? Possibly. I don't know if he's going to. I think that there's a really realistic chance that it's him with Frundell, and potentially Eklund on the top line for Sweden, which would make for a very formidable top line, as could compete with anybody at the World Juniors this year. But I think Stenberg for me right now, there's subtle differences, but he's still very much like on my first list, he was number 3. So and I think that's probably where he'll start my early season list as well, and my way too early list. But based on what I saw, even at the World Junior Summer Showcase, like, okay, this guy's dialed in, he's ready to go. He'll probably be on Frölunda's team all year, possibly playing top 6 all year. And then I would expect him to be a major factor at the World Juniors as well.
Yeah, and I did want to talk to you about like Belchet, Lawrence, and Preston, and also Vigo, but because he put up incredible numbers, but they're all different players. Can you tell me a little bit about like that range, even Ryan Robrick, but like those guys, is it like a much stronger class in 2025 in this range here at this point?
It's tough to say. I think it's too early to say. Like, oh, we try to make those bigger proclamations early, and I think sometimes it influences how we feel about the class. What I will say is that the early indications are that that there's a chance for it to be a little bit more robust than maybe the top 6, 7, 8 this year. Certainly there's going to be more defensemen in the fold. There's going to be more. More skill, more size, different things. Like, last year's class was huge, but then you have Belchets and Rubrak, and they're massive humans and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but in terms of that range, and like, I think it's going to be interesting to watch Vigo Bjork's draft stock this year, because he does not have the size. He does not have the skating at the size either to necessarily say this guy's absolutely going to be a top 10 pick. But he did something that no one has ever done before in the way that he produced last season as a 16-year-old at the top U20 level in Sweden. And if he gets minutes at the SHL level and he's able to prove himself further, because he's already dominated the U20 ranks, that will only help him as he moves forward. I did ask him at the summer showcase if he had any thoughts of coming to North America, and he said he's focused on Djurgården. He's wants to be there. But, because I was also like thinking, he's going to be kind of a tweener between pro and that. So like, he'll be one to watch. But I think like Belchets, Rubrak, Mathis Preston, who you mentioned, different players like that. And then of course, Tynan Lawrence, those guys really talented. I think there's still questions about every single one of them. I think we saw Belchets. He was a little hit and miss, but he's got that size. He's got the skating. He's got skill. He's got a lot of those things. Rubrak, he's got the size factor. Preston has just tremendous skill. Tynan Lawrence is kind of an all-around player and really mature. So I think that there's a lot to be figured out. There's going to be a lot of players that push themselves into that conversation this year. But I think in general, the top 5, top 10 of this draft is going to be quite talented. I'm really looking forward to seeing how everybody kind of progresses this year. But there's a lot to look forward to in this class.